upgrade or do you need a system upgrade? I'm not sure what the not approved means for the sticker here. Can you guys let me know if you see the not approved or if it's just us in here? That would be great. And then we'll
It
get
is
set up.
not letting me add my camera.
Okay. Then we'll just listen to you today. But at least you're in here, and our team can troubleshoot maybe on the back side. I'm not sure how to get the not approved off of here. Let's see. It's always like the technology executives that don't know how to work the TikTok. So maybe our team can work on that in the back end. He has to give TikTok permission to his camera. So maybe he can hop off that live and then just focus on the LinkedIn live while we do that. But in the meantime, if our team can help me figure out the not approved thing, that would really help on this side. We didn't schedule this live because obviously it's not in our normal cadence because we're trying to bring more people into kind of having this conversation. But the goal here, if you're watching on LinkedIn and YouTube, is that we want to talk about like, do you need a system upgrade or do you need a strategy upgrade? Especially with given all of the different noise in the marketplace around like, what do you actually need to do? It really needs to be kind of a diagnostic approach in this conversation of like, what can that actually mean for the value that you need? Because a lot of times what we're looking at, right, is are we going to be able to achieve what we want to achieve as a business with this new technology? And I do need for our team to just help on the not approved side on this piece so that I can get this off. I might have to join again, but we'll just ping them and see if we can get that piece of it. But other than that, I think this happens a lot in conversations when we look at legacy tech versus new tech. And how do you know if you need to get off of legacy tech? Can you let me know if you see the not approved on the screen or not? Mixed signals for both. So it says not approved on the big screen, and we all know that TikTok often trolls us on the lives as well. So if you could let me know if you see that or not. If I just see it, cool. If you don't see it, no big deal. But so when we look and go into kind of diagnosing what this looks like from either a systems perspective or a process perspective, the first thing we're going to want to do, even if it's a remediation project, is we're going to want to look at like what do you got going on right now and what's the problem. And I think a lot of times that's something that people don't want to do, right? Because it's hard, right? It's hard to have that conversation. We want to fix it now, or we've been sold this narrative by the $1 billion, SaaS marketing machine of how do you ensure that you are making the right decision with technology that you're investing in, especially with the massive risk that's going on right now. So Danny on TikTok said, how can AI help us and how can we trust it? And so I think for enterprise AI, and I think that's the important piece to understand what we're talking about now. Were you able to make that happen, Adam, or no?
I'm in. I just need you to let me back into it.
Okay, cool. I'm in. We're
I,
in.
I, I think I'm good.
Blink mic permission denied. Interesting. All right. So we're just gonna keep going with what we're gonna go with here. You guys can hear Adam in the process. So if our team can help him get on here, that would be great. If we can't, that is what it is. Trust is a big deal for us commercially. Yep, TikTok is not behaving. So let's, circle back to this. Let's circle back. Let's not boil the ocean here. For trust, when we're talking about looking at the trust of I think that's an overused term. I think it's something that we we misunderstand trust as results, right? So I'm less concerned with, trusting AI and more concerned with, is AI delivering you the results that you need through just being able to produce what the problem is. It's not so much like
Yeah.
trust, it's so much of like, what do you need to do as a business, and what does that actually produce the results that you need to leverage? When it comes to trust, I think that's more of like an adoption piece of it. Unless it's in the cybersecurity modernization piece, then that's an issue um, for just the overall cybersecurity. We're very afraid of hallucinations. It's interesting that you say that, and I'll let Adam chime in too when he's ready and finished with the logistics things, because I was just doing a case study on the U.S. Patent Office and their work on their new AI failure, which is just kind of like hot off the press. But they spent $75 million trying to get this new AI feature, because if you've ever registered a patent or tried to register a patent or a trademark or anything like that, it takes years, right? It's a very, very manual, fickle process that's very difficult to utilize. And they hired Accenture to help them utilize this new platform, and it completely hallucinated all of this data and broke down their overall process, which we see a lot, Adam. So I'll
Yeah.
let Adam kind of speak to this, and then you guys on TikTok, let me know if you guys can hear him, because we have him live on another screen here.
So, from a perspective of trust in AI, I think that the moniker really should be that AI is a tool that can give you answers. It's your responsibility to figure out whether or not that they are good answers. Just like if you have an employee or a coworker that's going to give you an answer, do you trust every single coworker's answer for what it is? Because uh, you know, a lot of times that's a good spot to be in, is have some trust, but at the same time, it's never perfect. And AI will give you things to think about. If
Hmm.
it's your responsibility to then carry it to something that's a bit more meaningful. So when we're thinking about how AI impacts how we do work, how it is we think about our implementations, how it is we think about strategies, it gives you some thoughts and ideas and can help identify maybe things that you didn't think of. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that everything that comes out of it is going to be exactly what you want, or appropriate to the task at hand. And
Yeah.
AI does hallucinate. The same in what it does is it tries its best to provide a 100% complete answer. It won't say, I don't have this information, so I don't have that part of the answer. It will come up with something, and that something will be based on what it thinks is the best case, and that's not always a
Yeah.
100% accurate.
I think that, I mean, that's, and so I mean, I guess, like, how do you, I feel like that's pretty like self explanatory, like, right? Like, I think it's harder in these situations to know, because AI is seen as this like end all be all answer to things. Like, so how do you know when it's hallucinating or when it's not hallucinating, right? And so I think that's a big piece of this kind of trust angle of like, how do we know in our systems when our predictive AI agent, right, is actually saying something's in aisle 3 apart, right, bay 9, and it's not there. It was there 3 weeks ago, but it's not there now. Like, how do we know that in this type of angle? And then most importantly, how do we fix it?
Well, you don't know that. How do you know? How do you know a liar is lying to you, right? you generally assume that most of what they say you can take at face value, and the rest of it you kind of have to confirm for yourself. It's the same type of thought process. You know, assume AI is going to hallucinate. You know it is going to do that. It's not a well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. It is going to. And so you take everything that comes out of it as a 80 to 90% right,
Mhm.
maybe higher. Of course, it's getting better and better every day. But you have to assume that you're going to have a challenge, and then be okay with what you've got, knowing that there's a margin of error. That's fine. It's just like anything else has a margin. There's a margin of error in everything. We talk about software deployments. No software ever goes live without bugs and defects.
Yeah.
That's a fact of life, right? That's why there are upgrades and updates and all that jazz. So it's yeah, I wouldn't say don't use AI because it could be wrong. I would simply say use AI and know that it could be wrong. And if you have something that is dependent on 100% factually accurate information,
Mhm.
then maybe do your own research, and don't shortcut that. Maybe that's important enough to require your thought and diligence.
Absolutely. And for those of you that are joining, that's Adam. He's the CEO of the Confluential, which is, the company that I'm a partner at. And we're hoping he can get into mixed profile at some point. But I think this is a great question from Danny on TikTok. But what happens if you're in a heavily regulated industry like finance or aerospace and defense or something like that, and it literally cannot be wrong? So like what risk tolerance should you have in that situation of, or I mean, I guess what quality assurance do you have to be able to do that?
Well, so there are other ways of doing that too, right? So part of the challenge in there is, in a heavily regulated industry, is going to be to make sure that you are using your own agents, then, right? Like
Mhm.
you have to create skills and context for it, and restrict it to being able to use only those skills and content text, right? So um, there's a number of things that are important about that too. We'll talk about finances, right? You don't want the example that somebody gave me yesterday was plugging in financial information for a publicly traded organization and saying, now generate a press report for tomorrow. You just put your financials on the internet. Did you know that? That's not necessarily going to be posted and found quickly and easily, but you put your financials on the internet, and that's a gap in security. So the overall thought process there should just simply be understand the tools that you're working with and what you can
Yeah.
do with them, and be realistic. And you can do some great things with AI and in finance, but at the end of the day, if 0% risk is the only number acceptable, then maybe you need to consider whether or not you're taking a risk by saying, "But I want to use AI."
Yeah.
Right? So there's that. Um, I did try to join the TikTok again, by the way. See if that lets me back in.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I will look in here. Are you on your profile or whose profile?
Yes, mine.
Okay. Let's see if I can let you back in here. I think the piece about that though is like that's the biggest piece of it still denying you. I think it's probably something in your settings. So
All right, we'll figure it out
yeah, no worries. We
another
can,
time.
yeah,
Sorry, audience.
we can do it on
Sorry,
here.
fans.
So I think it's a big consideration in here. I think this is on a big a good conversation track. Aren't there ways to guardrail these things or to put in blinders when it comes to AI to for financials? I think I'll take this and I'll let Adam chime in. Absolutely. That's why, a lot of times, especially the businesses we worked with, because our specialty at the Confluential is heavy industry. So a lot of those businesses are heavily regulated. regulated, right? There needs to be requirements around traceability and data access and all of those different things, and all that trickles down, right? So now we're in a space where your system is really going to be dictated by the customers in which you serve, and your security preferences are going to be dictated by those as well. So that's a big consideration, especially in finance. You absolutely can put in guardrails and those types of things. I think what you need to look at, though, is AI makes mistakes just as human employees make mistakes. So you need to have an operator. And that's why a lot of people, when they come to us and want some sort of like dark manufacturing or something like that, you can absolutely do that. There's no doubt about it. But if you don't understand what's happening under that layer of these local agents, that's why we always um, build those for our clients as opposed to have them invest in an outside system, or if they do, it's a big due diligence to understand what data that's looking at. And that's going to be a huge consideration in that conversation. So for that specific question, when we're looking at strategy versus system, you're going to need to look at what guardrails are put in place for your AI agents, right? And how you make sure that you have the back end knowledge to go in and reconfigure them, or restrict them, or do all of those different things. It's a journey, right? It's not something you just turn on. It's like hiring a new employee, as Adam said. Anything to add to that?
I would just simply say that if there are scenarios where people get overexcited about using AI, and there are a lot of confusions about what's the difference between AI and other types of tools too, right?
Hmm.
AI is contextually based, and it's still a series of rationale and logic decisions built in software that's designed to give you an answer that's the closest to what it is it thinks you want, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, let's not over solution this. Let's think about what we need. I like these questions here. What do you think many companies confuse with buying new technology versus having a new strategy? And then the follow up: what does a truly strategic IT roadmap look like compared to a list of planned purchases? At the end of the day, the answer in here is more along the lines of, what do we need? What are the actual needs? And then how do we solve those needs creatively? And sometimes, especially when you start thinking about things that are proprietary and sensitive information, maybe an internal machine learning algorithm is a bit more what
Hmm.
you're asking for, right? Can you tell me what the difference is between what you'd get from a true full blown AI? Like, I have to use Claude for this, but do you? What if you did have a full blown machine learning algorithm that could
Hmm.
answer that question? Would that solve your problem? And right now, most people don't know how to answer that question. And the and because they don't know how to answer that question, they default to, well, I need AI. One of my most favorite examples of the difference between understanding and solutioning goes back a couple of decades at this point to when the Sarbanes-Oxley Act was implemented, and then all of a sudden, every single requirement was a SOX requirement. Why do you need this? Well, it's a SOX requirement. Why do you need that? Well, it's a SOX requirement. And it's like, what? This has nothing to do with finance and reporting. So tell me why this is a SOX requirement. Or we're talking about something entirely different. And the answer is, actually, I don't know what SOX requirements are. So I'm going to overcompensate for my problem by saying I have a risk that I don't know if this is a SOX requirement. So I'm going to assume that it is from a conservatism perspective, and I'm going to call it a SOX requirement, and I'm going to fix it that way. So I'm going to close a gap that may or may not exist. And that's what you do: a lot of hard work closing a lot of gaps that don't exist. If you just don't ask the question that will eliminate all that hard work, am I right? Do I need AI for this, or can I get by with something more effective? Because an internal machine learning algorithm could really do a whole lot more to be secured against the internet than AI right now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we have a lot of, dialogue happening on TikTok here. If you're just joining us again, we're having a panel discussion. And Adam, I know you can't see him. We're working on it. In this like systems versus strategy type of upgrade, I think you don't, but you do, you is so real. They're saying like do you need to use Claude? And then saying, but you can use Claude to make the algorithms and make that process more efficient. Absolutely. I mean,
Yep.
if it fits your needs, right? Just because you can doesn't always mean you should. I'm not at all saying that you shouldn't use Claude in your processes. I'm just saying it's not the be all end all, right? And until you know what you actually need, and it's never going to be a perfect answer, right? Just like any sort of software deployment isn't going to be a perfect a perfect no defect type of deployment all the time. But you should be able to have all of these options and weigh them. I think what we're saying is like you don't have to use AI for everything, but it's always a good option to have on the table. Just like, when you're looking at something like an AI agent or a system upgrade, we have
Yeah.
option A, B, and C. And we look at those with different lenses, and everyone kind of has a bias in thinking like how things should be done. So that's just a piece of that. So we certainly can have good decision making and good business discipline decision making processes in those types of things. So let's see, S4 HANA is not being built to suit our company needs, but being built to suit SAP's needs. That's pretty normal.
As to be fair, as it should be, right? SAP's problem isn't you; it's selling you a product that
Mhm,
they can sell to other people. It is your responsibility as a company to figure out how it is you accommodate your own needs, so that when you buy it that it's something that you can use effectively. And if you're not able to do that, then maybe think about hiring somebody that can help.
mhm, absolutely. So let's see if we have any good questions here from LinkedIn. I'm just trying to keep up with everybody's questions. Sorry, my internet is a little slow. So let's see. Okay. So if we're in a situation where like we truly don't know, I will get to your question here in just a second. But just to kind of set the baseline, how do you know when we go into these types of conversations, like what the diagnostic process has to look like when you're in, I have a problem, I think, right? But I'm not sure where it exists in the organizations.
uh, Start pulling on the thread. I would say, like, if you have a problem that you're not sure what the root cause is, then start talking to people. Ask why, right? Why is this a problem and what's causing it? And then start chasing, right? This is something that to the topic of the conversation. How do we know that we're actually upgrading systems versus upgrading a strategy? Your strategy should be prioritized above your systems upgrades. Your system upgrades should support your strategy. Your strategy should be designed to solve problems. And so, what are my problems and where do they come from? The root cause analysis that digs into that is necessary. So, what are our pain points, and where are they coming from? And then, how do I track that next? Right. So, I talked to somebody the other day. They're struggling with available to promise
Mhm.
functionality. They don't know exactly why they can't figure that out, but their thing is, and we'll extrapolate a bit of meaning on it and make some assumptions just for the sake of example. But we'll say, I I have an available to promise problem. I can't accurately tell my customers when I'm going to be able to give them the product that they want to order. I can give them a date, but I have
Yeah.
no thought, I have no capability of knowing whether or not that's accurate.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to give them a date. And I'm going to hope for the best and try to solve this problem. Okay. So what is our problem? Well, I can't give them the right date. Right. But why not? Well, because the system doesn't tell me the right date. Okay. Why not? And so you have to kind of track now, who do I need to talk to answer that question? Maybe I got to talk to somebody in IT at this point and say,
Hmm.
how is ATP calculated? And they say, well, we take the pieces that are ordered and we track what the we make an assumption based on all of the pieces that are ordered and when those are going to be available. Okay, is that based on actual available inventory today? Is that based on expected inventory levels tomorrow? It's based on expected inventory levels. Okay, are we considering the time that it takes to manufacture? I don't know actually. I'm not sure that manufacturers. All right, so I've got something to figure it out in there. I can go talk to manufacturing. How do I make sure that my lead times for manufacturing, my production time, is factored into this conversation? And then where does scheduling fit in? Okay, scheduling is dependent on raw material availability. So how does that fit in? And how do I track that back to vendor lead times? And then come to find out, you know what? All of our vendor lead times are set at 15 days or
Hmm.
15 weeks, whatever, because they come over the ocean. They're all set at 15 weeks for every part, every item across the board. Well, that's a problem because some things take longer to get than other things.
Hmm.
Partially because I get them from some things I get from different vendors, and those types of things. So now I've asked all the questions. I've traced it all the way back to a possible root cause. Now what happens if I say, all right, well then maybe we'll be able to get better times on this on ATP if I am able to say vendor by vendor, material by material, here are my expected lead times. And now I can say I know when those materials will be ready for production. I know my production scheduling and my production planning and actual production. There's timelines are good, and now we have something that we can fix. And did I need new software for that? No. Is this even a customer service or order entry problem? No.
Hmm.
It's a sourcing and procurement problem. Um,
Absolutely.
so that's what we ought to be doing when we figure out what am I trying to do from a perspective of solving pain versus doing something useful in general.
Absolutely. So on that same note, we've got a question on TikTok about Price FX, which is, a more of a pricing intelligence tool, right?
Uh,
Have you ever used that tool specifically?
I have not used it. Give me some more background and see what I can do to wiggle
Yeah,
my way
so
through it.
yeah. So Price FX, as I understand it, Joshua, it really is for more manufacturers heavy industry. It's kind of like the configure price quote type of system. And it sits on top of whatever manufacturing execution system or ERP system, so like an SAP, Oracle, IFS, right? And then it takes the product cost customer kind of sales data and then gives you some sort of like price optimization. Exactly. It will feed our homegrown ERP. Um, so that's kind of what we're asking about. I don't think that we've ever implemented that specifically. I'm happy to ask the rest of our delivery team as I usually do, and then I can get back to you. But I think we're seeing a lot of these. We talk about vertical SaaS all the time, right? Kind of prop up to be able to kind of do things like detect margin leakage, right? Or recommend optimization for pricing or find anomalies in pricing. A lot of times when we look at these different pieces. So I think that's a good kind of a good tool to look at on top of that. So you're gonna really figure out how you can essentially use those types of tools in your specific ecosystem. And does your MES already do that? So that's a big piece of that. Anything to add, Adam? While you
Well, I think that's a fantastic way of putting it. I think that there's also a realization in there that you got to remember that pricing is like one of the most complicated things a
yeah.
business does. So um, set your expectations on the floor for what it is you're going to get out of a pricing tool, and understanding that it can do a lot, particularly configure price quote tools, CPQ tools that are based on complex configurations. But
Mhm,
at the end of the day, your sales team is going to price it at what they can sell it for in a lot of cases.
mhm.
And so the logic in there is a little bit tough to bake in. So you got to have some flexibility as well.
They
Try the
like
TikTok.
try
See
it
if
now.
you can let me in. Try
I
it in.
think it's because it thinks your account is like a new account because you didn't use the other account. If you can't tell, Adam's not a TikToker, right?
I'm learning. I need some
He's
support here,
learning.
but
He's
um,
learning in these types of
see if it
things.
lets
So
me in.
I'll see if it does. I think I saw you join. I have to like find it in here, but they like the C-suite expectations on the floor. So while I find it, I'll let you answer this question, which is a very similar one from LinkedIn here. So it's oh, thank you for yeah, you pinned the comment. Thank you. How do you keep root cause analysis from turning into like a blame game, like trying to figure out the problem and this is your fault. This is your fault, accounting. This is your fault, IT. I think that's a really good question. While I try and let you in, I you can
Yeah.
take that one.
Well, I think that it, there's a humility in it, right? You keep it from turning into a blame game by not pointing the finger and just investigating, right? There are certain things that you try to figure out, and sometimes somebody did screw something up, right? And that's okay. I screw things up all the time. I've been screwing up TikTok all morning, right? So, but that doesn't mean that I'm not I'm worried about it, or that
Yeah,
I'm gonna blame somebody else, or something like that.
except for me. It's
Although my
information.
counterpart is blaming my executive
You
um,
sent the invitation.
capabilities, but that at the end of the day, come to it from a perspective of how did we do this wrong, and how do we get it right, and then go from there. And if we can't figure it out, then we can't figure it out. But we got to just get into the bottom of it, and approaching it from a perspective of seeking to understand is always the best approach. If I can seek to understand what's going on, and why, then you pull out the I'm not trying to figure out who did this. I don't care who did it. I have a
Yeah.
problem that needs to be solved. And a lot of times that's a bit more effective than trying to figure out who caused the problem anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And we're not going to be able to see you with the camera, but we can hear you now, which I think that's just helpful in general. So we'll just keep you up here
Okay.
and hear what you're saying, and we'll have to utilize the camera at a different time. But thank you, Joshua. Thank you both. Been catching you for a while, and it's really good. Appreciate you're here. Best problem solving movie. Oh, geez. Now we're getting movie questions in here. What's the best problem-solving movie in here? Interstellar. My Interstellar. I've never seen that movie. I know. It's always with you guys in the movies.
I like
So,
Interstellar. That's a good
um,
one. That's one of those old. He's been there the whole time.
yeah. So, I think that's a great answer. And a lot of times when we see these different kind of ancillary systems. It's not, please say psych. Is that, or is it psych, Kyler? Okay, will do. Um, I don't even know. You guys, you always start on the movies. I haven't seen anything. That's for Adam. He knows the movies
That's a
or
generational thing.
who, oh, generational thing. What? So I
If
don't
you've never
know,
said
but
psych,
yeah.
then
So
you get it. You get it.
okay, well, I've said it for sure, but I was thinking that's a stellular is at the top of your list. Okay, got it. On it. But I think that piece of it, and the last point I'll make about kind of the tools to look at is that's a point of like diagnosing what's going on right in your organization and doing that independently. Like you can utilize a relationship you have with an IT vendor, or, something that you have with an SI right now to give you information, but ultimately you as the business need to make that decision. You can't have somebody else make that decision for you. And that's really the point of having these types of conversations. And so I love that Joshua brought that up, because you have the ability to say like, this is a tool I'm looking at. Is it going to be best for me? Maybe. Is it not? Maybe as well. But having that ability to go through like the overall analysis in that piece is going to be critical for just the behavior of AI agents, right? To be able to kind of like uncoil what's happening with the AI agent and being able to know what that really looks like from that piece. Taking action items from TikTok, always, always,
There we
always.
go.
And I'm not in a bathroom, as everyone seems to think. These towel holders are really sending people off this week. So I know, but um, and we can properly feed it. Okay, yeah, absolutely. So okay, cool. So on to kind of the next piece of this overall conversation is how do you know how much it's going to cost, right? And I think that's a big piece of this conversation, right? So we have a legacy system that's working okay, right? And so we've gone through the process of saying like, is there something fundamentally wrong with it? Maybe, maybe not. Or are we going to upgrade it, right, to a new system? But right now, with understanding how much these different pieces cost. And Copilot's a great example of this. When we look at like collaborative agents and we look at something that has a price point of like $30 a month, and then all of a sudden, we're putting it into everyone that has an Outlook account, right? And then all of a sudden we have, 30% of our licenses that are unused, and we have usage types of costs and outputs and all of those different things in a lot of these different tools. Is there a benefit, right, to being able to stay with what you have because the cost has gotten so significantly unpredictable?
Um, I mean, if you're trying to predict costs, I think you're kind of in a losing battle. Um, if the value is there, it's there. It's not, it's not. Cost isn't going to vary so widely that it's going to impact the strategy behind your decision. So I'd say if the value is there, go for it.
If the value's there, to go for it. That's what you have.
Yeah. So like, well, I was
I
getting an
think you
echo. I turned
muted
my mic
yourself
off on. I muted
on
myself on
TikTok.
TikTok because I was hearing myself again on yours. So I think that at the end of the day, if we're talking about cost, and variance and cost, I think that's a market um, fact of life where cost is going to vary. It's going to continue to go up. I could like if you're going to talk about the unpredictability of costs, you should talk about the predictable part of it too, which is it will always continue to increase overall, right? It's the line will generally trend upwards. It's not going to get materially cheaper. So if you're trying to time the cost of it, the best you can do is think about end of year for your software vendors, and strike at that point in time. Second best is end of quarter. But after that, if you're trying to figure out whether or not those types of variances and costs are going to make or break whether or not you should or can actually go with a particular software investment, you maybe aren't you're maybe not ready for that investment. You're still on a in a gray space, gray area about what should we do next.
Yeah, for sure. Do you know that you're muted on TikTok or no?
I do. I
Okay.
just I muted myself on TikTok because I was hearing myself twice.
Right, so you have to
Um,
turn off the sound on your computer, to do that and just hear it on your phone.
I
But
was
either
hearing
way.
it through your mic twice, right? So,
Right, so you have to mute your computer and just hear your phone. So you won't hear me twice. But either way, we've made it through 47 minutes of this, this this
I
rocky
think you're
deployment.
misunderstanding my problem. So,
Okay.
we'll figure it out. I will turn it on. I will deal with the echo.
So when we look at that piece of it though, like what are you supposed to do? Just invest in software that you don't know how much it costs?
No, what are you going to sign a contract that doesn't have a price on it? That's unrealistic. But what you're going to do is you're going to validate that you need that software and that the cost to implement it is worth it. And then you're going to
Mhm.
understand that it's a significant cost no matter what you do. So you have to make a realistic decision on a business strategy perspective. And then you say, what's the best I can do with this? And if you can't afford it, then you can't afford it, and that's fine too. If it doesn't fit the business case, then it doesn't fit the business case. But if what we're talking about from a variance and perspective isn't a plus or minus 50%, it's a plus or minus 5 to 10, right? So and that's stretched
Mhm.
over 3, 5 years or longer. And now we're starting to figure out what an actual cost is on a long-term basis. And so if the value is there, and you think of it from a perspective of I know how much it could cost and what I can afford, and then try to negotiate beyond that, then great. But if I'm off by, this is a random figure, but if I'm off by 100 grand, and that is the difference between whether or not I can afford a multi-million-dollar project, or whether or
Mhm.
not a multi-million-dollar project is something that this steering committee is going to invest in, then I would argue that that $100,000 difference means that you didn't do the work on proving that the system was needed in the first place. Does that make more sense?
Okay. Yeah, I think it does. And I mean, a few things here in the comments, and forgive me, I can't see your comments as well with another person on here, but enterprise level corps will not have an issue with the cost. It's their relationship that they'll have an issue with, is what we're saying here.
That's
And then
another
I
good
also
piece.
think, yeah, I think the licenses question is a good one here on LinkedIn that we should take, which is 30% of licenses are unused. What does that say about rollout? Bad fit, bad training, bad targeting, bad governance, all of the above.
Um, how long ago was the contract negotiated? Right? If we just did it,
Mhm.
um, we just signed a contract for 30% more licenses than we need. Maybe we've planned that to be growth within the contract, right? Maybe my licenses could and should grow by 30%
Yeah.
over the next 3 to 5 years, right? There's also I've had this contract for 15 years plus, and I'm now using 30% fewer than I'm paying for. Um, that's a different conversation, because you should be looking at your contract as to how much are we supposed to be paying for, and are we leveraging the annual opportunity to modify our license counts within the pricing structure, right? So a lot of that will be contractually set up to not allow you to reduce it by a certain amount year over year, but most of it is, if you use less of it, you say this coming year. It's never I only used this many last year. It's this coming year I expect to use 30% fewer, and then
Mhm.
you give the appropriate heads up on licensing counts and work with your vendor to do that. So that's a if it's something that was just signed, that might be intentional. If it's something that's been signed for a little while and it's beyond the actual contractual terms of the initial contract, then that's bad planning if you're paying for too much.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a consideration when you look at the level of the licenses that you have, like what is the growth that's needed in that type of thing. um Loved that point of view. Thank you. That you're such a TikTok star, Adam. So even though we can't see you
They
in your
don't know
beautiful
yet.
they don't know yet. Yeah, they don't know, right? But I think that's a big piece in the relationships, right? What is the relationship with the vendor too that's helping you understand how many licenses you need and how many you don't, like, and if they're not helping you in those agreements to modify that, or they're not interested in working with you, and I think that says a lot about who you've chosen to partner with in these types of conversations. And that will really depend on, again, the relationship with the vendor that you're working with on that. So let's see. um, let's see. In these type of conversations, how do you know kind of what to look like in in a strategy that might take you away from the legacy vendor? Like, do you tell them that you're, looking away from it, or do you kind of do that in secret? What do you kind of operate with in that kind of awkward relationship?
Well, it depends, I guess. I mean, are we using them as leverage for negotiation against somebody else that we know we want to pick? There's a balance in at what point do you know you're not seriously considering whether or not you could go to one vendor or another. And this doesn't apply to just your legacy vendor. It applies to all of them in your selection process, right? If you know you're not going to pick them, there are two ways of thinking about that. One of them is let's be fair to them and the amount of work and effort that they're going to put into it, so that we can say, look, you're not going to make it.
Mhm.
Sorry, appreciate your help. I lean more towards that than the alternative, which is, well, let's keep them along as possible and string them along. No, buy their product because we know we can use them as negotiation leverage against who it is we're gonna buy. If I think that if I know I'm not going to use my legacy vendor ever again, the chances that is leverageable against the vendor that you're going to choose is not 100%. Because a lot of times that vendor knows if you're talking seriously to them, you don't want to talk to your existing legacy vendor, right? So there is a sense of it where we could always stick to where we're at and not upgrade. And then your preferred vendor say, well, if that's the case, then we're not going to negotiate against nobody. But if we're talking about a real scenario where, look, we can stick with what we got, but you're more expensive, and we like the things that we can get from you better, then we have a scenario where we can't keep both of them in play. But the problem becomes if you are unfairly leveraging your existing relationship in a way that just strings them along, they're putting in a lot of effort into this and chasing. You're that's on you whether or not you want to be stringing them along in what you want to do, whether or not you're a good partner to them. I think that's an important question.
Yeah, I think that's a good question as well. I mean, and something we often sometimes don't talk about. Like, what does the business need to do to be a good partner to the vendor as well in these types of conversations. So I think that's an important piece for us to look at. So in the last 4 minutes here of this incredibly technically mature live, rapid fire, what do you need to know when you're looking at upgrading your system versus your strategy? 3 things you should do first, or what do you want them to know?
Your actual problems and whether or not you can solve them without a new system.
And I would say, what does that look like if you don't get a new system, right? Like, and that's kind of, I think, the same level of what if you don't need a new system. And a lot of times that comes with an executive that is like obsessed with a new ERP system, and they came in, they're new, CIO, CFO, that type of thing, and that's unavoidable in those situations. But being able to understand what that looks like and being able to have that economic awareness to talk about it from a business case sounds like, we're not able to nail down pricing as much as we might want to. Right, but understanding what that looks like from just the cost of business and moving from one system to the other, because in large organizations, that's going to be incredibly painful, no matter what you do, just because of the disruption between the two options. So a lot of times, legacy systems are underutilized or not utilized in the best way that they could be, and that has to do with process and people, not so much the technology, but still having that analysis, that diagnostic done is going to be important.
Agreed. Like, at the end of the day, implementing a new software package is hard. It takes a long time, and there's a risk to it. Like, we talked to somebody recently that hasn't closed their books since April. They're way behind on that. And that doesn't even include the fact that their production line is producing 10% of volume right now.
Mm-hmm.
10%, like that's 90% of that, and they don't even know if they're actually fulfilling orders properly. So I think that's the risk in that. If our gains of going to a new system are marginal, the risk is significant. Then why wouldn't you just stick with the system that you got and get it a little bit longer?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we had a question in here, like, does that mean you're not modernizing? Not specifically, right? Totally depends on, what that means in these overall conversations or where you're at. But you got to be able to know, especially what happens in a situation that you need to get off the system. So thank you guys for putting up with us as we get the iterations. It's agile, as one of our team members said. That we're getting to the Friday lives where we can do this. We'll be live next week on our usual time. If you joined our Instagram lives or new ones this week, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Adam, and we will see you guys next week. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.